Hi guys, welcome back to From PSD to HTML5. My name is Dan Wellman, and in this lesson we're going to start adding the CSS that we'll need to turn our pages from the bland linear layout the underlying markup gives us into the design demonstrated by the PSD. So in the last lesson we added the base underlying markup for the templates, and today we can start to style things up a little and start adding some of the classes that we get from Bootstrap. And this will give us the layout. So that's the next step. We start out with the base HTML, and we can then start to think about the kind of high level layout stuff without worrying too much about the actual details of the design. In this lesson, we're thinking really about the layout of the page as a whole. So let's just go back to the PSD briefly. I'm going to clear these guides again, and I'll just save that so that we don't have to keep doing that in every lesson. And if we switch on the grid, we can start to think about which elements should be in which grid containers. So in the header, we can see that the nav needs 4 columns, and that gives us 8 columns for the logo and the text. So to take advantage of Bootstrap's grid, all we need to do is add some class names and maybe some containers to various elements within our page. So in the header then, first thing we need to do is to add the class name container to the body of the page. And this is one of Bootstrap's classes. And if we just take a quick look at the page, we can see that the container gives our page the 940 width that the designer requires, and it centers it for us. So that's exactly what we need. And also the container class is needed for some of the other Bootstrap classes. So for the header then, we can add the class name row to the header itself. And then we can add the class name span 8 to the H group. And the nav can have the class span 4. And that's what we do when we're working with grids. Most of the grids that I've used work in this way. Our grid is 12 columns in total, so all of the elements inside each row need to add up to 12. The footer is actually very, very similar to the header, so we'll just go down to the footer quickly. So the footer can have the class name row, and then the small can have the class name span 8. And the nav can have the span 4 class again. And let's just take a quick look at the page again. Okay, so that's given our header the layout that we need, and the footer as well. So that's exactly what we want, that's fine. So we've given the page a quick first pass and added some of the class names to some of the simpler elements. So now we need to start looking at some of the more complex elements like the main content container. So let's go back to the PSD. So we can see that in the main content area, we've got a heading which can be 8 columns wide, and the social icons, just like the nav, can be 4 columns wide. So first of all, we can add a row container, and then for the elements in the first row, the heading and the list, we can add the required span classes. So that should be span 8 and span 4. So let's go back to the PSD and see what we're working with next. So the big hero image is full width anyway, so let's not worry too much about that for now. So this kind of introductory text here, we've got the header on one line by itself, and then the same kind of 8 and 4 column layout here. We can continue with that. So we won't worry about the heading because that's full width anyway. So we'll add the row container here. And this is going to encapsulate the introductory text and the list of links. And then the paragraph can have the span 8 class, and the list again can have the span 4 class. And don't forget there's another article near the bottom of the main content section, so we can just copy that straight down here. We'll just do a quick sanity check in the page. The page is starting to get the layout that we require. It's kind of starting to come together now. Still a bit messy obviously, but we're not at the stage where we're kind of finalizing styles. We're just, like I said earlier, we're just kind of worrying about the layout for now. So the last thing that we need to do on this page is to organize the portfolio grid. So this is where the thumbnail component that we selected when customizing Bootstrap comes into play. So we can arrange these elements in the grid by giving the unordered list the class thumbnails. So don't forget, this is in the nested section in here. So we'll say that's thumbnails for the container. Now each item takes up 4 grid columns, so the li elements here can have, these can all have the span4 class, and we can just copy that onto each list item. And then finally, each of the list items itself needs to have a new wrapping element added to its contents. So we'll use a div for that. And the class name that gets added to this one is thumbnail, singular. So let's just go through and add that to each of the list items. Okay, so if we go back to the page now, yeah, we see that our portfolio grid is now organized, almost organized in the way that we want. So you can see there's a slight issue here with the thumbnail layout in Bootstrap. So I don't know if this is a minor bug. We'll fix that later on. So we won't get hung up on that now. If we go through the page, we can see that we've got pretty much the layout that we need. We need to work on these thumbnails anyway, because as you can see, it's inheriting some styling from Bootstrap that we don't actually need. So we'll tidy these up in a later lesson. And for now, we just want to press on and add the layout for the list page template. And this won't take long because, as before, we've made changes to the layout of the page, like the header and the footer and stuff. So moving on to the list page now, we can pretty much copy over the header and the footer as they are. So we'll do the header first, and we'll just grab the footer as well. And then there's one of these articles near the bottom of the page, so we'll copy this one over as well. And on the list page here, this is where the media list class that we selected when building Bootstrap, this is where we use this. So now we just need to add the styling for the media list. So the list item this time gets the class media list. And then each of the list items gets the class media. So we need to add a couple of new containers. So the first one, we give this one the class pull left, and that's a Bootstrap class again, and all it does is float an element to the left. So we'll wrap the image in this container. And then for the image itself, we need to give this the class media object. And then the second container, this time the class name is media body. And the heading itself gets the class media heading. And we can copy this format down for all of the list items, And again, we'll just need to update the SRCs of the images. So we'll do that now quickly. And we'll just take a quick look at this page as well. Okay, so very similar layout to the home page. Obviously, again, it's just the layout that we're looking at here, and we just need to go back and add the class container to the body again. And now we should find that the list page is nicely centered as well now. So in this part we looked at defining the layout for our 2-page templates using the PSDs as a guide. We can use a grid system that matches the number of columns in the PSD, but so far we've only just added the layout. So this is just the first pass of styling. So we start out high level, dealing just with the layout, and we can then progressively go deeper into the page and add more detailed styling for particular elements. So we've added a couple of new container elements to the underlying markup, being careful just to add the minimum amount that's actually required to achieve the desired layout. So that's the rule. Start off minimally and only add what you need. In the next lesson, we'll get the templates looking much more like the PSDs by adding some decorative styling. Thanks for watching.